What is going on, guys? Grave here. Today I'd like to talk about how ZOS has decided to get rid of chapters in the Elder Scrolls Online and move towards a seasonal content model instead. And this is something that a lot of games out there are doing over the last several years. But in the letter from the director at the end of 2024, we got just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, right around Christmas time, they talked about they'd been successful with their strong annual chapter release, starting with Morrowind in 2017. And going through the Gold Road just 6 months ago. It says zone design and quest content is at the core of every single Elder Scrolls game, as our annual chapter release model highlighted. We will still do lots of story content, but now looking into 2025, we need to concentrate on different types of content to support all types of players. So we're putting chapters aside and we'll be focusing on new types of content and a new release philosophy. Now, of course, they really have not got into the details just yet of what this is going to be. That's going to be kind of more to come later on. They're going to have new zone-based content. Over the course of 2025, they'll be moving towards a seasonal content model and away from launching massive content updates once a year as they did with chapters. We'll be talking much more about that in the future, but expect to see named seasons of 3 or 6 months durations with a mix of themed story content, events, story items, dungeons, and more. 2025 will be a mix of old and new as we move the dev team towards creating smaller bite-sized pieces of content. We will still have some larger items that we've been working on for over a year, which you will see launched as well. Freeing up the dev team from needing to adhere to such a strict annual cycle means we'll be able to have teams launch content when it is ready throughout the year and not work to a date in June. This will let us focus on greater variety of content spread over the year, and this supports the new season model. Now, like I said, this is something that a lot of games are doing. If you're a fan of Destiny, you know Destiny 2 has a season model. They've kind of gone away from that once a year content idea as well. They're starting that this year. There's been a lot of games out there that, would do big kind of annual updates and then just kind of small stuff here and there throughout the year. World of Warcraft would be a big example. They, do that one big update every year, one big kind of DLC, and then they kind of do some smaller stuff as time goes on. And that is one thing that I think ZOS really had going for them with the Elder Scrolls Online, because people like to see these new zones, new areas, getting new classes, meeting new characters if you're a fan of playing the story. Of course, if you're a fan of, in-game, you had a new trial, you got new dungeons. So, in general, there was a lot of stuff going for them, in my opinion, with the way they were doing it. But going to this whole new model of seasonal content, it may not be bad, don't get me wrong. It could turn out to be really good for the game. But at the same time, I'm a little bit skeptical when I see people going to seasons, because when they mentioned named seasons of 3 or 6 month durations, that kind of means you're going to have a lot of content spread out over that 3 or 6 month period, and it kind of just drip feeds that content. And a lot of people feel like, after the big chapter was released anyway in the Elder Scrolls Online, a lot of the content was just kind of drip fed to them to begin with. After you got your big update in June, everything else was kind of just slow to come out. But this really can put kind of an issue with that, I think, or make an issue with that with a lot of the community. It's going to kind of depend on how many dungeons they come out with. Will they still do trials? With them saying they're wanting to make content for all types of players. So that means your casual players and your hardcore players and your in-game players. So I'm going to be interested to see how they kind of level that out, how they make content for everyone at the same time by just doing seasonal content and not doing a big chapter. Because the big chapter to me was content for everyone. You had in-game content, which it was not as much as, of course, stuff everyone else got. But at the same time, at least you had in-game content, you had story content, you had stuff for solo players, you had stuff for group players, you had stuff for, people just kind of roaming the zones, finding, some group activities to do in the zone. So I'm going to be kind of curious to see how they do all of this going forward, how they do the events that we're used to. We're used to the same events every year in ESO, and change is always good in a game. Of course, you want to change things up. You want to be able to, freshen up the game some. But at the same time, I think a lot of people are kind of concerned when they heard this. I know there's a lot of, creators out there saying they're not really agreeing with this. They're afraid that it's going to ruin the game. They're kind of stepping away from the game anyway. And also, there's a lot of concern when Bethesda was purchased by Microsoft exactly what changes would be made. And I'm not sure if this is one of Microsoft's changes or if this was ZOS's change. I'll be kind of curious to hear more about that later down the road. We probably won't hear about that for a while, but at some point we'll probably hear if it was really something Microsoft was wanting to do instead of ZOS. But overall, I'm going to be interested to see how this idea works. But I'm very skeptical, if you want me to be honest, because it's something, like I said, all other games that have this philosophy of doing seasons or doing, kind of that content where it's over a several month period, kind of ends up being just kind of drip fed, and it makes it to where there's nothing really new to do in the game. And I know having a big DLC once a year is, waiting a long time for stuff, but at the same time you get a lot of that content at once that you can play for several months. When they start doing seasons, I'm worried that it's going to be just such a small amount of content that it's really not going to be something that the fans are going to enjoy. But leave me a comment with your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Like I said, I'm skeptical. Hopefully it'll work out well, but at the same time, I'm kind of concerned about this new idea that they're using for the Elder Scrolls Online going forward. Leave me a comment with your thoughts. And of course, if you liked it, hit the like. If you hadn't subscribed yet, please do so. And I'll catch you next time. Peace.